This is Value Investing. I'm your host, Jun Kim. In this podcast, you'll learn everything related to value investing. Hello, fellow investors. Welcome to another episode of Value Investing. This is episode 42, and Happy New Year. I hope everyone is doing well and everyone is starting the new year with a fresh mind, and hope that you guys achieve whatever resolutions that you have for 2019. As I mentioned in the last episode, I'm going to make certain changes in this podcast, but just wait and see what kind of changes I make in the future. But for the time being, I'm going to continue to do what I have done so far, and today's topic is 15 fun and interesting facts about Warren Buffett. I'm so excited to cover this topic because there are just going to be a lot of interesting stories with respect to Warren Buffett. So before I start, as always, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer that this podcast is for entertainment purposes only, and it is your responsibility to consult with your investment professional for any investment decisions. So without further ado, why don't we get started? The first interesting and fun fact about Warren Buffett is that the first time he purchased a stock is when he was 11. He purchased a stock called City Services. And when he first purchased this stock, it was at $38. And after a while, Warren Buffett noticed that this stock went up to $40 and he sold his shares. What happened after that is more interesting because this stock over the next several years had gone up to $200. So Warren Buffett was very, very regrettable about the fact that he sold the stock too early. So this is the time when he learned the importance of long-term investing. And when everyone is like 11 years old, do you even remember what you did? I don't remember what I did at 11 years old. Usually people just go out and have fun and hang out with friends in the playground. That's what we do, right? Or we play video games, or we watch or we read cartoons. But what Warren Buffett did, surprisingly, is purchase a stock. And he was interested in the stock market at the age of 11. That was just so fascinating. And another thing that is also fascinating, equally fascinating, is the fact that he already came to realization about the importance of long-term investment at that early age. So I thought that this is a very interesting data point, and that's why I think Warren Buffett got so rich, because he started his investing journey at the age of 11. Whereas most of us probably started our journey when we are in high school or in college or after 40, So I think starting early is very important because of compounding effect. But let's talk about that topic later. But that was the first interesting fact about Warren Buffett. The second interesting fact about Warren Buffett is that by the time he became 16, he accumulated total net worth of $50,000 approximately. So that's a huge accomplishment, because when I was 16 years old, I didn't have any money. I probably gotten maybe small allowance from my parents, but I didn't even think about doing any business. I didn't think about saving money for the future. But Warren Buffett, from the very early age, he was selling a lot of different stuff. He was selling gums, he was selling golf balls, he was selling stamps and Coca-Cola to the people around him. And he was just knocking door to door to sell Coca-Cola to people. And he was also doing his part-time job to circulate these newspapers door to door. So, and also at the same time, he was investing his money from early age. So by the time he became 16, he was able to accumulate $50,000. So that was a huge accomplishment at that early stage. I just feel that Warren Buffett is just different from other people and average people, but I think there's a lot of things that we can learn from him. Okay, let's move on to the next fun fact. The next fun fact is that Harvard Business School rejected Warren Buffett because of interview that he conducted. He was able to apply for Harvard Business School once he graduated from Nebraska University. And he applied for Harvard and he was able to get the interview. So it means that maybe his GPA was good enough for Harvard and whatever's written on his resume impressed Harvard faculty people. That's what I assume. But when he got into the interviewer just spent probably 5 minutes and he told Warren Buffett in the face that forget it, you're not going to get into Harvard. Warren Buffett told people that he was not really articulate when he was doing interview. At the time, his communication skills were not good. And also, his appearance was not good because he looked like 16 years old when he applied for Harvard. So he was skinny, he didn't really look good, he didn't have any executive presence, anything like that. And that actually led to the failure of getting into Harvard. But think about it. Harvard made the biggest mistake. And this is the part that I don't like interviews because when you do and conduct interviews, which I have done in the past before for my corporate job, you just don't know this person. It's just hard to know any individual in depth level when actually you do the interviews. Because no matter how many times you meet this person through interviews, they can always fake it. They can always say things really good for them, and that's what they're supposed to do. And you don't exactly know the work ethics. You don't exactly know how good this guy is for a certain specific field. So I'm just not a really big fan of interview because that can give you some bias towards the candidates for whatever job this person wanted to get in. It doesn't matter whether it's corporate or business school. I just feel that interviews should be conducted only for assessing communication skills, but other than that, it doesn't have any merit. That's just my personal view, so you may have different opinions. But anyway, let's come back to this point number 3, the fun fact. Harvard Business School made the biggest mistake by rejecting Warren Buffett for business school. However, that was a big turning point for Warren Buffett because Warren Buffett was able to get into Columbia Business School and he was able to meet with his mentor, Ben Graham. And there's a funny and interesting story about his application for Columbia School. Because when he tried to search for different schools after getting rejected from Harvard, he noticed that there's a name, Ben Graham, on the faculty list of Columbia. Because he knew that name from the books called The Intelligent Investor and Security Analysis. He thought that this author was dead already. But he was so excited to find that name, Ben Graham, on the faculty list of Columbia Business School, and he just wrote a letter to Ben Graham saying that, I thought you're already dead, but since you're alive, and I really enjoyed your book, The Intelligent Investor and Security Analysis, I really want to learn investments from you, and that's going to be my honor. Something like this, something along those lines. So he wrote a letter, and finally he got into Columbia Business School. And that's where all this value investing started. Because if Warren Buffett hadn't met with Ben Graham, the value investing probably wouldn't have been this popular among investors. And Warren Buffett probably wouldn't have become one of the wealthiest individuals in the world. So that's a big turning point. So whenever you get a rejection, don't be so depressed because that could be another turning point in your life, something better and something you probably will celebrate in the future. Okay, so let's move on to the next fun fact, which is Warren Buffett eats like 6-year-old child. He doesn't drink water. And when I watched a documentary about Warren Buffett, his daughter said that she's never seen Warren Buffett drinking a sip of water. Instead, Warren Buffett drinks cherry Coke all the time. So it's quite fascinating. Like, water is an essential part of like everyone's life. How can you not drink water? And it's quite fascinating again because he's very healthy without drinking water and even without eating vegetables. Warren Buffett loves fast food such as McDonald's, Wendy's, and he eats breakfast from McDonald's every day. And this documentary was talking about Warren Buffett for the most part. And Warren Buffett chooses to eat either cheap meal or little bit expensive meal. It's not even expensive, little bit expensive meal from McDonald's breakfast menu, depending on the direction of the stock market on that day. If he feels a little bit richer, then he eats a little bit expensive from McDonald's menu, and he eats really cheap version of breakfast from McDonald's if the stock market is down. So I thought that's quite interesting given the fact that he's the second richest person in the world. It's just quite funny. Also, I just mentioned that he's very healthy. He's over, I think, 80 years old, and he's still in a very good shape. His mentality is as sharp as someone in 20 years old. So I think probably better because he has accumulated a lot of knowledge over the course of his career. So it's quite fascinating to see this person drinking only Coca-Cola, not eating vegetable and eating, this type of fast food and still can be in a very good shape. Let's move on to the next fun fact, which is he purchased his first house in 1958 and still lives exactly in the same house. And also he drives his car by himself. Think about other billionaires. How can you not have a driver? And also, how can you not have any housemates? And how can you just live exactly the same house for more than 60 years? When he was asked why he still lives in the same house, he said that, the house is warm in the winter and it's cool in the summer, and that's all he needs. He doesn't like to have this kind of material thing. He doesn't like to have luxury things and so on. He's quite a character in that regard. Let's move on to the next fun fact, which is from about 10 years ago, he has started this auction where he sells to eat lunch with him on a one-on-one basis. The person who wins the auction can invite up to 10 people or something like that to lunch with Warren Buffett. And the bidding price is just crazy. The final price that won auction was approximately $3.4 million. That's quite fascinating. $3.4 million is a lot of money in and of itself. And what's also fascinating is people are willing to bid up the price up to this level just to have one lunch with Warren Buffett. And I think this goes to show that how respectful people are towards Warren Buffett because they are willing to spend this much money and they believe that they can learn something from Warren Buffett during the lunch. And I think that's just fascinating. Then let's move on to the next one. So next fun fact is 95% of his current asset has been made since the age of 60. So this kind of shows that how important it is for you to apply compound effect to your portfolio, because what compound effect does is that your wealth and knowledge is going to go exponentially. It's not going to go linearly. It's not going to increase linearly, but it's going to increase exponentially towards the end. So if you apply this compound effect to whatever you do financially and knowledge-wise, then you should be able to make a huge explosive growth towards the end of your life. And that's what happened to Warren Buffett. And that's why it is important to understand compound effect. So most of his fortune was made after he became 60 years old. So a lot of people these days are trying to get rich while they are young because they're such in a rush to become a rich, because that's what's important for a lot of people. But that's not how things work in life, as you know. If you really want to be successful, you have to put a lot of time consistently, and you have to persevere in whatever you do. And you just have to do it for a long, extended period of time, and you're going to get the results later. And the results is not going to come out overnight. It's going to come out over the course of maybe 10 years, 20 years, and even 30 years. And that's what happened to Warren Buffett, and most of the fortunes that he currently has been made after the age of 60. So let's quickly move on to the next one, because I think we have a bunch of things to cover today. So the next one is Warren Buffett doesn't have any computers, any calculators at his desk, which means he has to calculate all this investment like intrinsic value analysis in his head. And Charlie Munger once said that he's never seen Warren Buffett doing calculation, by writing something. Everything is done in his head. And also what's interesting is that Charlie Munger has never seen Warren Buffett doing discounted cash flow analysis. Even though that's what Warren Buffett claims to do, everything is done in his head, so people don't see how he does it. And what's quite also interesting is that he's still using Nokia flip phone. Nobody uses flip phone these days. Maybe for those of you who were born, after 1990, probably you guys are not really familiar with flip phones, because that had been around in, I don't know exactly the time period, but maybe 10 years ago, but nobody's using anymore, and everyone is using smartphone. But Warren Buffett didn't really change his phone. Warren Buffett didn't change his car, didn't change his house, and he stick with what works for him, whether it's investing principles or whether it's phone, house, or car, and so on. He's also known not to use any email. So that's also interesting, because a lot of us probably are very inundated with emails every single day, and I receive emails, like tons of emails to my work email address or to my personal email. So everyone is kind of became slave to these technologies to a certain extent. I'm a little bit off the track here, but Warren Buffett purely focused on reading really good materials, and he's not really distracted by all this technology and all these distractions that a lot of us are experiencing in this day and age. Let's move on to the next one. Next one is that, this is a good segue, because Warren Buffett uses 80% of his time reading books, newspapers, and so on. So reading is very important for Warren Buffett, and he really enjoys reading. And this is not just case for Warren Buffett, this is also case for Charlie Munger and Bill Gates. And when you are trying to look at all these billionaires and all these successful people, they have something in common, which is reading. They put a lot of emphasis on reading because they believe that it is quite important for you to accumulate this type of knowledge in order to be productive and successful. And they don't even think about trying to be successful because they are already successful. However, I truly believe that this type of habit, productive habit of reading, it's going to contribute significantly to your future success. And I try to read a lot of stuff as well. A lot of things that I cover on this podcast are from books, right? So that's one thing that I want to emphasize. And also, I try to read like 10Ks and annual reports and things like that. And that actually allows me to understand the business model of the companies that I'm interested in. And also, it kind of gives me useful insight about the industry the company is operating. So if you want to be a good value investor, I have no doubt that you definitely should like to read a lot. When I say a lot, probably more than 4 hours a day you have to read. Okay, so that was enough about reading, but I can't emphasize enough the importance of reading. So just keep at it if you're already doing it. If you're not, then try to get into the habit of reading books. It doesn't have to be only related to investing. You can read about, different type of even fictional books. Okay, so let's move on to the next fun fact about Warren Buffett. So Warren Buffett is getting paid about $100,000. So think about this, right? One data point. Because if you look at other Fortune 500 companies, a lot of these CEOs are getting paid on average probably $30 million. And it ranges from maybe $20 million to $60 million. Some people are getting paid like more than $100 million. Warren Buffett is the largest shareholder, is definitely categorized as controlling shareholder of Berkshire Hathaway. So he has a lot of say into his own compensation. But instead of increasing his compensation, he just stick with $100,000 salary for a very long period of time. If you pay, money to CEOs and executive team, I think that's okay as long as it's based on the performance, not based on, the size of the company and anything of that sort. But it's probably wise to have someone like Warren Buffett because he's not definitely working for the money. He's working because, as he mentioned, he's tap dancing to work. He literally enjoys the work that he's doing right now. That's why he's working. So we are happy that we have Warren Buffett as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway because he's just not doing it for the money, but he's just really passionate about the job he's right now in, and that's adding a lot of value. Okay, so let's move on to the next fun fact. So this is quite interesting. So there was one pediatrician in the neighborhood when Warren Buffett first started his investment partnership. So this pediatrician gave Warren Buffett $10,000 for investment. And that $10,000 has reportedly grown to $469 million. That's crazy. Warren Buffett was able to grow the money faster than anyone else in that era. And what's quite fascinating is the fact that Warren Buffett has done it for an extended period of time. And in some cases, if you look at a lot of hedge fund managers, their performance is good in 1 year, but not necessarily other years. So if you look at long-term track record, their records probably are not as good. But if you look at Warren Buffett, over the course of 40 years and 50 years, his track record is just outstanding. And people cannot explain this outstanding performance based on efficient market theory. A lot of people in academia are trying to understand whether it was luck versus, actual skill sets. But there's no way that you can explain Warren Buffett's performance based on efficient market theory. And also, what I want to point out here on this fun fact is that if you stick with the right investment manager, right? So this person, pediatrician, was able to stick with Warren Buffett for more than, 50 years and was able to grow the money from $10,000 almost up to more than $469 million. That's quite fascinating because it's just like stocks. It's just like purchasing a stock because once you have your stock purchased and invest your money in, then your money grows and you tend to sell the stocks once, stock price hits certain threshold level that you set at the beginning of your purchase. Then you sell and you buy other investments. But this person has stuck with Warren Buffett throughout, ups and downs and was able to grow the money to a significant level. So it's important to do the right long-term investing. And I think that's a good lesson that we can glean from this fun fact. The last one that I want to mention here is that Warren Buffett donated entire wealth to charities. And what's quite fascinating is the fact that Warren Buffett gave 85% of his total asset to Melinda and Gates Foundation. Look at other billionaires and millionaires. If they give money to charities, then what they usually do, understandably, is to set up a foundation named after them. And that's what people want, because they want their names to be remembered even after they died. I think that's really for the good cause and really good culture that we have in America. However, Warren Buffett didn't care about whether or not his name should be remembered in the future, but instead he gave 85% of total asset that he has to Melinda and Gates Foundation. So he didn't care about that. He cared more about how this money is being spent in an effective and efficient manner. And it's just similar to how Warren Buffett invests his money. When you have your company first set up for whatever reason, usually the first thing you probably would do is to change the name of the company to your name. That's kind of really common sense thing to do, right? But Warren Buffett, when he first acquired Berkshire Hathaway, he didn't change the name. And he kept that name. Berkshire Hathaway, by the way, was a textile company very, very long time ago. And Warren Buffett was able to grow this company into multi-billion-dollar company. And he didn't change the name. I think it's just similar in that regard, how Warren Buffett donates his money to Melinda and Gates Foundation. I think that's why a lot of people have huge respect towards Warren Buffett, and I think his name is going to be remembered whether or not he has his own foundation and so on. Okay, so those are the fun facts and interesting facts about Warren Buffett that probably you have not heard of before in other places. Maybe you have, but at least some of these points probably weren't quite well known to a lot of people. So that's why I put together this podcast episode, just to go over them, because it provides very interesting stories. You're going to get a good grasp of what kind of the man Warren Buffett is and how he operates and so on. So I thought that this is quite interesting and fascinating subject to cover. Anyway, so that was it for this episode. I hope that you're enjoying the first week of 2019. And as I mentioned in the intro, whatever resolutions that you have for 2019, hopefully you get them accomplished during this year. And good luck with your resolutions and Happy New Year. Thank you very much.